Well, hopefully I won't have to share this with Milhouse and Martin. Here's your look at the brand new Jakks Pacific, The Simpsons Radioactive Man. Collect your favorite cartoon characters from the Simpsons TV series with the first wave of the Simpsons 5-inch scale figures featuring premium detail and articulation. These iconic characters from the Simpsons are sure to please collectors and cartoon lovers alike. Looks like I bought more than I bargained for. But is Radioactive Man worth the asking price he is online? Before we answer that question, I'm sure the first question you guys are probably going to be asking is just how tall the figure is. No, actually, I was asking the price. No, before that, let's first figure out how tall the figure stands. If you really want to include, though, the lightning bolt that he's got on top of his head, Radioactive Man is, in fact, about 5.5 inches in height. If you don't want to factor that in, the figure is actually only about 5.25 inches in height, which translates to about a figure that's 13.5 centimeters tall. So I did order Radioactive Man from Entertainment Earth. The price that they were asking over there, I think, was about $26. A standard Simpsons figure, though, by Jakks at the same similar size, is about $17. So you can see right there, there's about a $9 to $10 difference between this guy and, say, a character like Krusty the Clown. Now, if you're looking, though, at the proportions of the figure, the one thing that kind of does bother me about Radioactive Man, especially if you compare, say, with like a Homer Simpson, yes, I get it, though, that he's supposed to be a little bit more muscular, but it almost does seem like his body's a different kind of proportions, at least just the way they designed the figure, than Homer is, or maybe, for that matter, like Willie, who's quite equally strong as well. Here's also what the figure looks like, though, with Moe Szyslak, also here Otto. And here's also what the figure, though, looks like with Bart Simpson. It only then just dawned on me, I never picked up the Super 7 release of Radioactive Man. Which, speaking, though, of prices, I think that guy was even online on his own for $54.99, for about $55. I don't know if I'm really going to pull the trigger anymore when it comes to Super 7 stuff from Simpsons, just because, again, I know the line has already been canceled. Do I really want to kind of go back in there and kind of pick up the last remaining characters of whatever they have left of their, and I guess, their ongoing waves, which, again, is very little. There's only about, like, 4 figures I think I haven't yet picked up from Super 7. I don't even know, really, if I have any interest doing it anymore, but I certainly did have interest to pick up Radioactive Man. And getting him, though, out of the packaging, one thing that's kind of cool about him is that he does actually have the standee to recreate Radioactive Man #1. Of course, the figure does also come included with a waist clip stand, but he also comes, more importantly, with also an instruction booklet. And the instruction booklet would be one thing I would recommend looking at first. I mean, it may look like quite a meaty read, but then you realize basically all of it is just some additional writing from other languages. Really, the only thing that you really would want to be looking at is probably the first front page and then also the back page. The back page, first of all, tells you how to take off that plastic piece on the back of his body. That's the thing to basically just to prevent the batteries from draining. Also, how to turn on and off his light up feature that's on the front of his chest. And then, of course, more importantly, how to eventually change the batteries. Luckily, though, for Jakks, that they included the batteries already. You need LR41s or AG3 batteries, and you need 3 of them, and that screws onto the back of his body. Don't worry, I'll cover all of that in a second. Let's just move that off to the side. So, as mentioned already, the figure does come included with a little standee, which is really kind of cool. As we certainly see, though, in 3 Men in a Comic Book? Radioactive Man, of course, issue #1 was the holy grail that all 3 of them really wanted to have in their collection, and then ultimately they all kind of pooled in together to buy that comic, where ultimately it did mean that they had to share the comic, and we all know the result of what ended up happening to Radioactive Man #1. It got ripped apart by the dog, it got electrocuted. In the end, I guess the birds made it into like part of their nests. But the fact that we actually get ourselves like a little recreation of this is kind of really cool. On the back, though, it's pretty solid in plastic. On the bottom, it's a little bit more hollow, though, than that. And, of course, it's basically 2 pieces put together. You have the exploding nuclear bomb there in the back, Mushroom Cloud. And on the top, we've got Radioactive Man #1, back in November 1952 for only 10 cents. You can't buy anything now for 10 cents. And on the other side, we've got Created a Hero. So what you basically do with this, and this, by the way, all also translucent plastic that they use down below here, it's really cool. It doesn't light up, though, which you would think, though, that with Radioactive Man already lighting up, that they would have done something very similar to the base. I mean, with how thick this actually is, probably they could have incorporated some batteries, but I know that would also have increased this. A tiny little violin? No, not a tiny little violin. Would have increased the cost of the figure. So we'll put that right over there. The figure, like I said, also comes included with a stand. The little post piece here actually does have some articulation, so you can move it here. A nice loud ratcheted joint, too. I don't even know why I had to bring that so close to the camera. This also does ratchet there, too. And I thought this would actually open and close, but it doesn't. I guess it's just so it secures a little bit more around his waist. But if you look at the back of this, there's a hole right there. You basically just take the peg that's provided, peg that in place, just like that. And then you got yourself a way to attach Radioactive Man. Before you do all of that, though, in fact, you can actually go back a little bit. Right here, though, the figure does also have a peg. So if you want to just actually have him just standing on the actual base rather than flying in it, you can just simply attach him right there. Because the figure, if you look at the bottom of his feet, does actually have peg holes. But let's just move ahead with that. We just bring this up a little bit. If we want to recreate the way that it is in the, I guess in the front of the comics, basically like flying towards this. The only downside to these Jakks-specific figures is that there's no articulation where you can move the head up. So Radioactive Man, unfortunately, isn't going to necessarily be looking at where he's going. He's basically just going to be, well, first of all, let's get him on his display stand. So first of all, we want to kind of lift the cape up. Because this doesn't open and close, you sort of have to put it in on the side and then turn it around. And then basically you just bring this back up a little bit. Fly him in. It kind of looks a little similar to that. I probably could have maybe looked and referenced that a little bit better, but at least it kind of gives you an idea of how you can have this thing posed. Now, if you don't want to choose to have it that way, and again, you've got articulation here as well, so you can move this up and down. Simply just, again, like turn the figure a little bit, slide him off the waist clip, put him right over here with wonky looking feet. And we're just going to go ahead and detach this again from the display stand. And again, you can then get yourself Radioactive Man kind of in a little more of a heroic, stoic pose, which of the two options available, I might actually go with this route instead. And just get him onto this display stand just like that. Looks good, other than obviously I didn't attach it properly onto the peg. The peg, by the way, though, they have placed the hole a little bit further forward because obviously it wouldn't have made any sense to have it more closer back to the heel. But yeah, that looks good. Might end up just having it displayed like that, which unfortunately then means I'll have to find a place to put this because I would hate to really lose this if I ever change my mind down the road. So let's just take him off his display base. We'll move that off to the side. I'll show you where the battery compartment is on Radioactive Man. So if you look on the back of his cape, at least they concealed it nicely. The battery compartment is right here. You'll have to unscrew this and then install your LR41 batteries, 3 of them, 1, 2, and 3. Obviously, that's already been done. I didn't have to worry about doing that right again, this guy out of the packaging. And then you have your on and off switch. Currently, it is set to on. The thing that also is kind of interesting about this is that I thought that on would have actually been over here, but you can see it's really hard to make this out. I just basically knew when I took this guy out of the packaging. The setting that it was already, I just switched it to the opposite setting. Yes, there's some visible screws, unfortunately, on the back of the figure's body, but at least the soft cape that they put over top is going to hide all of that. And then all you really have to then do is you're going to press the belt buckle here for Radioactive Man. The symbol here on the front of his chest will pulsate a few times, and then you'll start to see that each of the sides of the symbol will sort of deplete on its own. They'll go like boom, boom, and boom. It won't make that noise, obviously. So let's just go ahead and press the belt buckle. Shield your eyes, children. Shield your eyes. You can see how well that glows. And this does this for a while. In fact, actually, I thought I had to go back to the belt buckle and turn it off again. You'll see there's 1, there's 2, and now over 3. All 3 of them will diminish. Going back, though, when I pressed the button again, thinking I would do that to turn it off, I just basically cycled through the whole sequence again. Was it really necessary to add the batteries? That would be then the big asking question. Again, like you're looking at a figure that's $10 more than, well, let's bring back in Homer Simpson. $17 figure, $26 figure. I mean, without the batteries, you would really have to ask, like, with just the display stand and Radioactive Man present as he is now, how much would he have been less? Maybe $5 less, $2 less? I don't really even know. Because, I mean, there's a lot of plastic that went into this. The battery light-up features, I don't know how much more that tacks on to the budget of what they're producing for this figure. I mean, unfortunately, though, it does limit any articulation to be expected there in his waist. You can't do anything with it. The unfortunate trade-off, though, for Radioactive Man, one thing I will say is that I don't want to say it looks more like a Happy Meal toy, because clearly Happy Meal toys would never have the levels of posability that figures like this would have. But I can't, again, help but think that looking at this guy, it looks like something I would have probably gotten at McDonald's. That being said, though, the figure's sculpt is pretty good. I mean, for a classic-looking Radioactive Man, of course, we've got the Radioactive Man symbol there on the top. That's not just been painted. No. It's actually been sculpted there. You got the lightning bolt there on the back of his head. There's still head articulation. I mean, the fact this figure isn't just a brick. You can actually do some things with it. The coloring of his chest looks good. I will say, though, like the coloring of his chest isn't quite the same same color as his limbs, his head, or really for that matter, his lower legs. It kind of seems to be like they probably have painted the chest a different color, and then they would have then molded these in red plastic. Of course, we already talked about the fact he does have the soft cape. It's a nice detail, though, on the side of his arm. It kind of actually looks a little bit like Mega Man. I don't know if this is telling us how much energy he has left in the tank. Of course, he's got himself as well, the watch on the other side there, too. Nice overall looking figure, but again, like, I don't know if he really necessarily needed to have the light-up features. To include, though, like things like this with the deluxe releases, because again, there's also the Dracula Burns, which I really am anxious to get my hands on. Dracula Burns also comes included with his casket. And I think for that alone, that's pretty much all I think the figures really needed to have to be part of that deluxe treatment. I don't really feel like light-up features weren't all that necessary. I mean, it's a cool touch, but it just means that's something else I'm going to have to worry about down the road of changing the batteries. As for the figure's articulation, Radioactive Man, in fact, does have a rotation in his head. It rotates all the way around. His arms do almost as good of a job. Of course, they get a little bit tied up around that cape area. And, of course, there I go, pressing the button. I knew that was going to happen. The arms hinge out easily enough. There is also no swivel here in his bicep. There's also no swivel, I should say, in the elbow, but at least you can bend it back and forth. Hands, in fact, do rotate all the way around. Again, the only thing that this figure, unfortunately, is sacrificing in is he has no articulation here in the waist, but though he does split out on the legs, you take his legs and move forward, you can move them back, bend at the knee. No articulation down below here, but he does, in fact, have articulation in his ankle. You can also rock it back and forth there as well. Is it a good figure? I think so, yes. I don't know, again, like if we are going to be getting any more deluxe figures. It sort of does seem like Jakks Pacific is really coming up with a lot of cool ideas. Some ideas, again, depending on personal preference, really. I liked personally like the prank phone that most tavern would have had. I know some people kind of said, well, that just seems to me like a waste of money. If I'm going to invest anything into what they're doing with Jakks Pacific, it's more really just the figures. Or if anything, the evil Crested Clown doll. The tavern phone was probably a complete unnecessary release. But certainly when it comes to things like this, is really a Radioactive Man for almost $10 more, really worth that price, when really all considered, all the other Simpsons figures of a 5-inch scale have all for the most part been around $17, $16 to $17, depending on where you guys are finding these. Radioactive Man asks a little bit more from your budget, but, in the end of it, at least he does come include with that Radioactive Man #1 sign. I don't feel disappointed at all the fact that I'm paying more to get something like that, because even though I probably don't have any plans to have this guy in flight, I do actually like the idea of having him posed stoically in front of it. Well, the world is safe again, but for how long? One thing, though, I did want to point out here in final looks of the figure is the placement of the peg. I don't know why, though, Jakks Pacific, of all things, chose to have the peg so far to the far edge of the display base, which you're unfortunately not seeing right now. Oh, wait, here. Okay, it's coming back again. You'll notice, though, where they've put the peg, even if you have the legs spread on Radioactive Man, there's no way that he can stand in the middle of the base. Had I been Jakks Pacific, and had I been the one that was in charge of putting the peg on the base, I think I myself, oh, it's gone again. I think myself probably would have had it a little bit more closer to the middle, so that when Radioactive Man is standing stoically like this, he wouldn't look like he's leaning to the far side. Now, the price point, though, for Radioactive Man already established is that this guy's being asked a little bit more out of your budget. $10, about $9 to $10 more. I mean, a regular Jakks Pacific figure goes for around $17, so for that, at least you're getting yourself a display base. I think if not for that, I would be really even more disappointed that I was paying so much more just for a light-up feature on the front of his chest. I don't feel really the light-up feature is necessary, but the fact that at least they are including the backdrop of Radioactive Man #1, it's less of a sting for me that I'm paying a little bit more for this guy versus a regular Simpsons figure. What do you guys think of Radioactive Man? Let me know down below in the comment section. Have you guys picked up any of the deluxe Simpsons figures? Still on my sights, though, is to get Dracula Burns. Yeah, he would have been a perfect thing to look at during the spooky spot season, but c'est la vie. I'm going to have to wait and see if I can try to track him down through other means. Speaking of other means of picking up these figures, one mean that you could go is going the route of Entertainment Earth. That's, in fact, where I've actually picked up both him and Mo Sislak. I've also picked up Lisa. I'm just waiting for Lisa to be delivered to my doorstep. But if you wanted to click the link down below in the video description, that link not only will take you directly to Simpsons, but that same affiliate link will also knock off 10% on anything that's currently in stock over on their site. If you guys did enjoy this video, though, do it a solid. Throw it a like. Here it comes again. You guys want to stick around for more so? I hope so. Hit that subscribe, turn on that bell, and the most important thing is that you're coming back. As always, thanks for watching. See you guys next time.